Hey there everyone! Welcome back to the channel. It's been a minute, but we're diving right back into it with some of the most insane travel stories. So grab your favourite drink, get comfortable, and let's remind ourselves why sometimes the worst travel days make the best travel stories. I've got some interesting gameplay for you too. We're taking a break from the Minecraft jumping that you all loved so much. Apologies in advance if I'm really bad. Story 1. I'd been planning my Japan trip for over a year, 2 weeks exploring Tokyo, Kyoto, and a few places off the beaten path. I'd studied some basic Japanese phrases and was feeling pretty confident about navigating the country. On my third night in Tokyo, I met up with some Australian backpackers at this tiny izakaya in Shinjuku. After several rounds of sake, one of them mentioned getting tattoos as travel souvenirs instead of the usual fridge magnets. I'd never considered getting a tattoo before, but 4 drinks in, it suddenly seemed like the most profound idea ever. Alcohol plus profound idea plus foreign country is the holy trinity of travel regret stories. I can already see where this is headed. We found a tattoo place that was still open, not easy in Japan where tattoos have a complicated history. The artist spoke minimal English, but I showed him the kanji for inner peace that I'd found on a translation app. He looked at it a bit oddly, but nodded and got to work on my shoulder. It hurt less than I expected, and I was pretty thrilled with how it looked. For the next 3 days, I proudly wore tank tops showing off my new ink. Japanese people kept giving me strange looks, but I figured it was just because foreigners with tattoos aren't that common there. On my 5th day, I was at a ramen place when the server, a college-age guy with decent English, kept glancing at my shoulder and suppressing a smile. When he brought my check, he finally worked up the courage to say something. "Excuse me, but your tattoo, did you know what it means?" I confidently told him it meant inner peace. He looked uncomfortable and shook his head. "No, sorry, it says cheap toilet paper." Cheap toilet paper? This is why I don't trust translation apps with anything more permanent than a menu order. Imagine confidently displaying your passion for budget bathroom products to an entire country. I laughed, thinking he was joking. He pulled out his phone, typed something, and showed me. There it was. The translation of my tattoo symbols. Cheap toilet paper. I frantically pulled up the app I'd used and realised I must have somehow selected the wrong characters. The symbols for inner peace and cheap toilet paper weren't even remotely similar. How did this happen? I went back to the tattoo artist the next day, embarrassed but determined to fix it. I showed him the correct symbols for inner peace on my phone. He recognised me immediately and looked apologetic when I pointed at my shoulder with a grimace. The problem was that fixing kanji isn't like erasing a pencil mark. We struggled through a conversation using our phones to translate. He explained he could either cover it completely with a larger design, or try to modify the existing characters to change the meaning. Going back to the same guy to fix the tattoo is certainly a choice. I think at that point you have to cut your losses and find someone that actually understands you fully. I didn't want a massive cover-up tattoo, so I chose the modification option. He sketched something on paper, showing how he could add strokes to the existing characters. Through the translation app, I thought he was saying it would change the meaning to finding peace or something similar. The process took about an hour. He seemed genuinely focused on getting it right, consulting his phone several times. When he finished, he looked pleased with his work and showed me in the mirror. It looked more complex but elegant. I paid him extra for the fix and felt relieved. 2 days later, I met an American expat who taught English in Tokyo. When she saw my modified tattoo, she covered her mouth and tried not to laugh. Did you mean for it to say that?" she asked hesitantly. Apparently, the modification had changed my tattoo from cheap toilet paper to premium bathroom tissue is my passion. The artist had tried to elevate the meaning by changing cheap to premium and attempting to make it sound more dignified, but it only made it more specifically about my supposed enthusiasm for toilet paper. Oh my god, in all the ways it could have gotten worse and this happens? This is the most elegant upgrade to a terrible tattoo I've ever heard of. Talk about failing upward. I've been back home for 6 months now. I'm saving up for laser removal, but part of me wants to keep it as a reminder to never make drunk decisions in countries where I can't read the language. I've started wearing shirts in the pool, and I've developed a very specific fear of meeting anyone who can read Japanese. My friends still think it's hilarious. They bought me a 24-pack of the cheapest toilet paper they could find for my birthday. Honestly, I might have kept it. Best conversation starter ever, and it's kind of funny on its own. And those friends with the birthday gift are absolute keepers too. Story 2. Okay, so this is going to sound made up, but I swear every word is true. Last summer I was backpacking through Italy, saved for 2 years for this trip, worth every penny, when I had the most insane coincidence of my life. I was in Florence and completely lost track of time at this amazing little wine bar. By the time I realised what time it was and ran to the train station, I had missed the last train to Rome by 7 minutes. 7. 7 minutes is the travel god's sweet spot for maximum regret, close enough to torment you, but just far enough that running wouldn't have helped. Also, getting distracted by wine in Italy is the most forgivable travel sin ever. I was standing there staring at the departure board having a mini meltdown because I had a hostel booked in Rome and no place to stay in Florence. That's when I noticed this girl about my age who looked exactly how I felt. Complete panic face, stabbing at her phone. We made eye contact and she just said, "Last train," with this French accent. "Yep, missed it by 7 minutes," I said, and she just groaned. Let's call her Camille, not her real name, obviously. She had this really cool short haircut with a streak of blue in it and approximately 500 silver rings on her fingers. She was frantically searching for hostels too, but her phone was almost dead and the station Wi-Fi was garbage. We ended up deciding to split a hotel room, which sounds weird, but when you're a broke traveller, sometimes you make practical decisions, right? We found this place about 10 minutes from the station that was still expensive AF, but at least we could split it. In normal life, sharing a hotel with a stranger is a crime podcast episode. In the travel world, it's just a Tuesday. Something about panic in a foreign country really accelerates the friendship timeline. The awkward part was when we got to the hotel and the guy at the desk raised his eyebrows at us. He kept speaking really slow English and making these big gestures about 1 bed okay? And Camille and I just kept saying 2 beds louder and louder, like volume was the problem. We were both turning red and couldn't look at each other. They ended up giving us this tiny room with twin beds that were literally like 2 feet apart. There was barely enough space to walk between them. The bathroom door didn't even close all the way. It was one of those situations where you had to run the sink while you were in there, so the other person couldn't hear you. Mortifying. On the way to the hotel, we grabbed this cheap bottle of wine and some pre-packaged sandwiches from a convenience store. We sat on our beds eating and started sharing travel disaster stories. The hotel clerk's 1-bed assumption, and the bathroom door that doesn't close properly. Kind of a nightmare, and nothing fast-tracks intimacy like creating a water-based sound barrier for bodily functions. Camille had this habit of dramatically flipping her hair when she was making a point, and she snort-laughed, which was honestly adorable. She started showing me her experience with this guy she'd met in Barcelona named Miguel. Definitely not his real name, as we later found out. This dude was clearly running a scam on tourists. She showed me his messages where he claimed to be a private tour guide, who kept trying to get her to pay deposits for exclusive tours, but would always have excuses about why he couldn't meet. He had apparently gotten money from some of her friends before disappearing. He kept messaging her things like, "When are you coming back to Barcelona? I miss you, we can do private sunset tour," heart-eyed emoji. But then when she actually told him her travel schedule, he'd be like, "Oh no, I need deposit first, very busy those days." I was looking at his profile pic and nearly choked on my wine. Wait, is his name Miguel? Well, that's what he called himself anyway. Does he have a small tattoo on his wrist and claim to work for the tourism board? Her jaw dropped. You know him. Turns out this same guy had scammed my buddy, I'll call him Dave, 6 months earlier. Took a deposit for a special Gaudi tour and then blocked him immediately after getting the money. We started comparing screenshots and realised he was running this scam on countless travellers. We stayed up until 3 a.m. building this whole case against him, like we were detectives in a true crime documentary. We had timelines and everything. We were laughing so hard at one point that someone banged on the wall and yelled something angry in Italian. I like how what started out as a missed train story morphed into an international scammer hunter documentary. The universe really said, These two need a crossover episode to take down Miguel, the tourist scammer, in one night. Camille had this brilliant idea to report him to the actual Barcelona Tourism Board. We were a little wine drunk at this point. We actually ended up doing it the next morning, sending them all the evidence we'd collected. Something about being thrown together in this weird situation and teaming up against this scammer created this unexpected connection between us. We stayed up talking long after the Miguel investigation ended. I learned she was a photographer who'd quit her corporate job to travel. She learned I was taking a year off before law school. An impromptu scammer investigation fueled by convenience store wine is peak travel bonding. Nothing brings people together like righteous indignation and detective work in a foreign country. One thing led to another. More wine was definitely involved, and let's just say we ended up pushing those twin beds together. The next morning we decided to both change our plans and travel together for a few days. Those few days turned into 2 weeks. Then she decided to visit me in the States 3 months later. Then I flew to Paris to see her. We've been married for 2 years now. Sometimes she still calls me her missed train detective partner. Our friends think we're making it up when we tell them how we met, but sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the true ones. Definitely was not expecting this ending. You missed a train by 7 minutes and found your wife. I officially declare this the greatest meet-cute in travel history, and Missed Train Detective Partner might be the most romantic title ever. Story 3. I can't be the only one who keeps running into the same random stranger when travelling, right? This happened to me on the Routeburn track in New Zealand 2 years ago. I was doing the hike solo, probably stupid, I know, and kept passing this tall guy with a bright red backpack. Like, we passed each other at least 5 times. I'd stop to take photos, he'd walk past. He'd stop for water, I'd awkwardly nod as I squeezed by. It was getting to that weird point where you feel like you should actually introduce yourself, but also, why? Yes, the hiking trail dance. Pass someone enough times and suddenly saying hello is an obligation, serial killer or not. After like the 4th time, we finally exchanged those obligatory beautiful view comments that hikers make. He had this accent I couldn't place. I was about to keep walking when boom, the famous New Zealand 4 seasons in 10 minutes weather hit. The sky literally opened up like someone turned on a shower. Everyone on the trail scattered. We both ended up ducking into this tiny trail shelter. Calling it a hut is generous. It was basically a wooden box with a bench. And when I say tiny, I mean our knees were practically touching tiny. The rain was super loud on the metal roof, and there was actual thunder echoing through the valley. Super dramatic. Looks like we're stuck here for a bit, he said. Swedish accent, I realised. Of course he was Swedish. Tall, outdoorsy, good gear. They're always Swedish, right? Mother Nature might be history's greatest wingman ever. So we're sitting there for 2 hours. You know that feeling when you're trapped with a complete stranger and have to make conversation? Except he was surprisingly easy to talk to. His name was Magnus. Again, of course it was. And he had this weird habit of tapping his knuckles together when thinking. He told me he was recently divorced and doing the whole find yourself thing. He actually used air quotes and rolled his eyes when saying this, which made me laugh. He said his ex-wife got their apartment and he got their cat, but the cat died 3 weeks later. Even the cat couldn't live without her, he joked, but it was kinda sad. I told him I was on a gap year before grad school and trying to decide if my relationship back home was worth returning to. My boyfriend had suggested we take a break while I travelled, which we all know is code for, I want to sleep with other people but keep you as a backup. Nothing brings out truth like being trapped with a stranger, a recently divorced guy and someone in a quasi-breakup forced into a tiny shelter. The universe isn't even being subtle here. The crazy part is, Magnus had this weird collection of flat rocks in a side pocket of his backpack. When I asked about them, he explained that he takes one from each mountain he climbs, paints tiny scenes on them, and mails them to his niece. He pulled one out and it had this incredibly detailed tiny penguin painted on it. Like, how do you even do that with big hiking fingers? There was this weird moment when he was showing me pictures from his previous hikes, and our shoulders touched for a few seconds too long. Neither of us moved away immediately, and I remember thinking, Am I attracted to this random Swedish divorced guy in a storm shelter? But then he started talking about how his ex was the love of his cosmic journey, or something equally eye-roll worthy, and the moment passed. When the rain finally let up, we continued hiking separately but kept meeting at viewpoints. Our conversations picked up exactly where they left off each time, which never happens with strangers. A divorced Swedish hiker who paints tiny scenes on rocks for his niece. That lingering shoulder touch. This is straight out of a romance novel, with just enough cringe to keep it interesting. At the end of the trail, I took a selfie with him, for the travel memories. We added each other on Facebook with those empty promises to share photos. The weird part is, about 6 months later, I was scrolling through Facebook and saw he had posted a photo of that exact same shelter where we got stuck. But he was there with a woman. His status had changed to in a relationship, and according to the caption, he'd taken his new girlfriend to quote-unquote the spot where I realised what I was looking for. I occasionally still see his hiking pictures in my feed. He's back in Stockholm now and apparently remarried last year. Sometimes I wonder if he remembers that random American girl he was stuck with during a rainstorm, or if I'm just another traveller he passed on the trail. He took his new girlfriend to your shelter and called it the spot where I realised what I was looking for. I don't know how to feel about this anymore. Story 4. I never expected a 6-hour layover in Istanbul to change my life, but that's exactly what happened last summer. My connecting flight from Rome to Bangkok was delayed, then cancelled, then rescheduled for the next day. The airline handed out hotel vouchers, but then offered an alternative, a complimentary Istanbul by night tour while we waited for the next available flight. After 20 hours of travel, the idea of seeing something besides another airport terminal sounded perfect. This is how all the best travel stories start, with the universe laughing at your itinerary. You think you're going to Thailand? That's cute. They loaded about 30 of us onto a bus. Our guide was this energetic woman who kept reassuring us we'd see true Turkish culture, not tourist things. I was too tired to worry about what that meant. An hour later, we were walking through a neighbourhood where our guide pointed out Ottoman architecture, while our group took photos of cats. I stopped to tie my shoe, and when I looked up, the group was gone. Just vanished around a corner or into a building. My phone had no service, and I didn't speak a word of Turkish beyond "thank you" and "where's the bathroom?" In a panic, I walked in what I thought was the direction they'd gone, but each narrow street looked identical to me. After 20 minutes of increasingly desperate wandering, I heard music and followed it, hoping to find people who might help. This is literally everyone's travel nightmare, and following mysterious music in a foreign city is either the beginning of an amazing story or a horror film. No in between. I turned a corner and found myself in a small courtyard where a wedding celebration was in full swing. Tables were set up around a dance floor, string lights hung everywhere, and musicians were playing traditional instruments. I felt immediate relief at finding people, but didn't want to intrude on someone's special day. I tried to skirt around the edge, planning to ask someone for directions or a phone. An older man spotted me hovering uncertainly. He approached with a warm smile and said something in Turkish. I tried my pathetic tourist in distress routine, wide eyes, shrugging shoulders, and repeated, "English? Tour group? Lost?" He nodded in understanding and waved over a younger man. The younger guy introduced himself in broken but understandable English. I explained my situation, lost from tour, need to contact hotel or airport. Instead of immediate help, they both seemed amused and interested in where I was from. When I said America, several people nearby overheard and came over, excited. "First time Turkey?" the English speaker asked. When I nodded, he beamed. "Then you must eat. No good impression of Turkey with empty stomach." "You're lost? First we feed you, then we help you." I love that. I checked my watch. Still plenty of time before my flight the next day, and I was genuinely hungry. I tried to be clear that I didn't want to crash their wedding, but they insisted it wasn't a problem. The English speaker explained that having foreign guests at celebrations was considered fortunate. I wasn't sure if that was true, or if they were just being incredibly kind, but my anxiety about finding the tour group was quickly replaced by anxiety about imposing. They seated me at a table with what appeared to be extended family, older aunts and uncles who kept smiling at me and offering food despite the language barrier. The wedding was for the niece of the English-speaking man, who I learned was a high school English teacher. He split his time between his own celebration and checking on me, translating snippets of conversation and explaining dishes. The food was incredible. I tried spiced meatballs, various small plates of appetizers, and honey pastries sweeter than any I'd had before. The mother of the bride kept insisting I try everything, communicating through universal gestures of pushing plates closer and nodding encouragingly. Grandmas across all cultures share that same food-pushing superpower. That silent eat more gesture is truly the universal language. As the celebration continued, more guests learned about the lost American. People stopped by my table to welcome me, practice English phrases, or just smile and raise a glass. The initial awkwardness faded as I relaxed into the unexpected hospitality. My anxiety about my missed tour and rescheduled flight receded with each cup of Turkish tea. After dinner, the dancing started. The English teacher explained the basics of traditional Turkish dancing, how men and women sometimes dance separately, and how some dances form circles or lines. When he mentioned that guests typically join in, I felt a moment of panic. Before I could protest, a group of women motioned for me to join their line. I awkwardly tried to follow the steps, moving in a line with the other dancers. My clumsy attempts were met with encouraging smiles rather than mockery. An elderly woman took my hand to guide me through the movements. Despite my embarrassment, there was something joyful about being included in this tradition. Sometimes you just have to throw your dignity to the side. Dancing badly with kind strangers beats any planned tourist experience. Later, I was invited to participate in a custom where guests pinned money to the couple's clothing as a wedding gift. The English teacher explained this was a tradition where guests gift money to help the newlyweds start their life. He lent me some local currency to pin, assuring me it was symbolic rather than about the amount. I felt touched to be included in this tradition. As the night went on, I almost forgot I was technically still lost. Someone had called my hotel to let them know I was safe, and I'd been offered a ride back whenever I was ready. But I wasn't ready. The celebration was too vibrant, too alive, too different from anything I'd experienced before. Around midnight, I was sitting with a group of young cousins who were teaching me Turkish card games when commotion broke out near the entrance. My tour guide had arrived, looking frazzled and relieved. Apparently, when the group discovered I was missing, they'd reported it to the hotel. The hotel clerk recognized the description of the neighborhood and had a hunch about the wedding venue since his cousin was working there that night. The entire wedding erupted in cheers when she arrived, not because they were glad to see her, but because they seemed to view the whole situation as an extension of the celebration. My guide was both relieved and bewildered to find me playing cards with the family. As she attempted to extract me from the party, the family insisted she stay too. I imagine this poor tour guide searching frantically, only to find you happily integrated into a family wedding. Peak. When life gives you lemon's energy, you didn't just make lemonade, you started a whole lemonade festival. I finally made it back to the airport the next morning in time for my rescheduled flight, wearing my rumpled clothes from the day before and a blue evil eye bracelet the bride had tied around my wrist for safe journey. What started as a travel disaster had turned into one of the most memorable nights of my life. The family refused to let me pay for anything and insisted on giving me their contact information. The English teacher even wrote down his address and told me I always had Turkish family to visit. 6 months later, I still exchange emails with the English teacher. He sends me photos of family gatherings and keeps me updated on the newlyweds. The airline apologised with vouchers for my next trip, which I'm using to return to Istanbul next month. This time intentionally. I often think about how easily this could have gone differently. I could have found my tour group, seen the standard tourist sites, and made my connection without incident. Instead, I experienced the kind of genuine hospitality that no guided tour could ever provide. Sometimes the best travel memories come from the moments when plans fall apart. I went to Istanbul expecting a brief layover, and instead found a second home halfway around the world. This is why the worst travel days make the best stories. No one wants to hear about your on-time flight. They want the accidental wedding crash that gave you a second family. Beautiful disasters are where the magic happens. Story 5. So this happened to me like 3 years ago, and I don't know why, but I was thinking about it today. I was stuck at O'Hare because my flight to San Francisco got delayed for 5 hours because of fog or something stupid. I was super worried about my hostel reservation, because you know how they give your bed away if you don't show up. At the airport, where you spin the wheel of whether your dreams of reaching the destination come true, 5 hours is just enough time to maximize suffering, but not enough to actually leave. I was at the airport bar, expensive AF but whatever, and noticed this girl about my age who looked just as pissed as I was. She had this crazy curly hair and was typing on her laptop like she was mad at it, laughing. The bartender mixed up our drinks and gave my whiskey sour to her, and we both laughed about it. We started talking. Turns out she was going to SF too. She told me she designs escape rooms for a living, which I thought was pretty cool. I've only done like 2 escape rooms ever, but apparently it's a whole industry. She was actually flying out to check out some competitors' underwater room. We ended up talking for hours because what else were we going to do? At some point she started drawing these puzzle ideas on napkins, and I tried solving them. Failed miserably, by the way. The weird thing is, we found out we had the same random fear as kids, getting stuck inside those claw machine games at arcades. Like, what are the odds? She said she had nightmares about it until she was like 12. Airport purgatory really strips away the small talk, doesn't it? And finding someone with the same bizarrely specific childhood fear. That's the universe playing matchmaker. She told me all about growing up with her mum who collected alarm clocks. Not even kidding, they had hundreds of them in their apartment, all ticking at different times. Must have been maddening. I told her about how I was supposed to be applying to law schools but was finding myself on this road trip instead. Classic millennial move, I know. When we finally landed in SF, it was after midnight, and sure enough, the hostel had given away our beds. The guy at the desk was like, "Sorry, nothing I can do," and the whole city was booked because of some tech conference. We ended up having to split a hotel room, which was awkward at first. When the clerk asked how many beds we needed, we both started talking over each other, and it was this weird moment. Another accidental hotel room share. This is rom-com territory, but with claw machine phobia bonding instead of meet-cutes. The room was tiny AF with these narrow twin beds. She came out of the bathroom wearing these dorky flannel PJs with cartoon bombs on them, and I remember thinking how strange it was that I knew about her childhood fears and family drama, but not her favourite colour or whatever. That night we actually had this deep conversation. She admitted she was scared of her company getting too successful. They were about to sign some big deal, and she was freaking out about it. Said she was afraid of becoming the establishment or whatever. I confessed I was using this trip to avoid telling my parents I didn't want to go to law school. They'd worked multiple jobs to save for my education, and I felt like garbage disappointing them. Her alarm went off super early. She sets like 5 different ones, occupational hazard, I guess. We did the whole let's keep in touch thing that never happens. It's funny how we'll tell strangers our deepest insecurities before even asking their favourite colour. And of course, the alarm clock collector's daughter sets 5 alarms. The universe has quite the sense of humour. The crazy part, fast forward to last year, I was at my buddy Dave's bachelor party in Austin, and we did this escape room. I was reading the designer bio on the wall and saw her name. No way to know if she ever signed that big deal she was worried about. I still have one of those napkins with her puzzle sketches somewhere. She wrote this quote on it. "The worst trap is the one you build yourself." Pretty deep for a random airport bar convo. Anyway, just weird how sometimes a total stranger can make you think about your life in a different way. Like, I never did end up going to law school, and it worked out fine. My parents got over it eventually. The worst trap is the one you build yourself is eerily perfect for both your situations. Sometimes these ships passing in the night connections impact us more than people we've known for years. Story 6. I'd been backpacking through South America for about 3 months when I found myself on that fateful bus in Bolivia. the kind where chickens might be your fellow passengers, and the suspension was clearly installed during the Cold War. I'd met Emma, let's call her that, at a hostel in La Paz 4 days earlier, and we'd been travelling in the same direction ever since. Emma was this gorgeous Australian, with sun-bleached hair who could drink any local under the table and spoke surprisingly decent Spanish. I'd been working up the courage to ask her to travel together intentionally, rather than just happening to book the same tours. The South American chicken bus experience, and the phase of accidentally booking the same tours as your crush, classic backpacker mating ritual. The night before our 12-hour bus journey through the mountains, a group of us ate at this tiny restaurant where the owner kept bringing out free shots of something that tasted like licorice gasoline. I remember thinking the ceviche looked a little questionable, but 3 months in without getting sick had made me cocky. I felt the first stomach gurgle about 2 hours into the bus ride. At first I told myself it was just the bumpy road, but then came the cold sweat, the cramping, the urgent realisation that I was in serious trouble. The bus bathroom, ha 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 ha, there was no bus bathroom. The driver had announced something in Spanish when we boarded that I hadn't fully understood, but Emma had whispered, "He says we'll stop once halfway through." Once, in 6 hours. The traveller's nightmare trifecta, questionable ceviche, mystery shots, and a bathroomless bus. That moment when your stomach makes that first gurgle, and your brain goes, surely just the bumpy road, while your body screams emergency. I spent the next hour in silent agony, clenching every muscle in my body while sweat poured down my face. Emma kept glancing over with increasing concern. "Are you all right? You look terrible," she finally said. And that's when I had to make a choice between dignity and disaster. Dignity lost. "I think I'm dying," I whispered. "That ceviche. I need a bathroom right now, or something catastrophic is going to happen on this bus." Her eyes widened, but instead of disgust, she immediately turned practical. "Right, I've got Imodium in my bag, and I'll tell the driver to stop." This is the true test of travel compatibility. Not lost passports, but how someone reacts to your impending bathroom emergency. Emma shifting straight to crisis management? That's wife material right there. I'll never forget watching this woman I'd been trying to impress march up to the front of the bus, argue in Spanish with the driver who kept shaking his head, then finally said something that made him slam on the brakes, with a string of what had to be Bolivian curses. As I rushed off the bus towards some bushes with the entire bus watching, Emma grabbed my backpack and followed me. "What are you doing?" I hissed. "Standing guard, these buses sometimes leave people behind. Plus, there are like 15 men watching where you're going. I'll block their view." And that's exactly what she did. Stood there facing the bus, arms crossed, while I experienced what can only be described as exorcism by bowels behind some scraggly bushes on the side of a Bolivian mountain road. This woman isn't just a travel companion, she's a hero. Standing guard during someone's explosive diarrhea is the ultimate selfless act. Romeo and Juliet could never. When I emerged completely empty and utterly humiliated, she handed me water, wet wipes, and the Imodium without a single joke or disgusted look. The beautiful part, on that same bus ride, once I could think about something besides my imminent death, she told me about her own food poisoning story in Thailand that involved a shared hostel bathroom and a German tourist who kept pounding on the door. We've been married for 3 years now. At our wedding, she told everyone we fell in love on a bus in Bolivia, which is technically true. She's only told the full story after several glasses of wine, and always ends it the same way. When you've stood guard while someone has explosive diarrhea in a bush, that's when you know it's true love. Fell in love on a bus in Bolivia is the most impressive understatement in wedding toast history. Real romance isn't Instagram perfect. It's someone who stands between you and the world during your darkest bathroom emergency. That's it for today's video. If you made it this far, I appreciate you a bunch, and thanks for coming back to the channel after so long. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this video. We're going to be trying some new things to keep you guys along with YouTube happy, so please bear with the format for now. We'll iron out any bumps over time. I already have a few more videos on the way, so make sure you check back in the next few days for those. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you again soon.